Sorry, I didn't see you there. I was just reading my favorite book. It's called Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. And yeah, so it's a memoir that he wrote about growing up a really poor boy in Ireland, a little bit in New York City, but mostly in Ireland. And he was like really poor. And yeah, what I expected from this book was not much. I just thought that it would be really good because I just read the back of it and a bunch of rave reviews, and I was like, okay, it's probably going to be really good. It's probably going to be really sad. But I thought that I could relate to it a little bit because I'm Irish. Turns out I couldn't relate to it at all, but so I wanted to read it because I really like memoirs. I just do. I don't know. And my mom told me that it was really good. She'd had it in our house for a really long time. She said, you have to read this because it'll teach you a lot about what it's like in Ireland. And I was like, okay. But I never really got around to doing it, and I knew that a few of my friends had read it last semester and they said that it was really good, and I just wanted to read it for pleasure. And so I saw it in Miss Gungraffi's library, and I was like, hey, can I check this out? And she was like, Chloe, why don't you just read it for your holiday IRB? Okay, so for the summary, I have my notes here because I don't want to forget anything. And our main character is Frank, the author, obviously. It's a memoir. And he's an Irish Catholic kid. And for the first, chapter or so of the book, he is living in Brooklyn, New York with his family. And his family consists of his mom, Angela, his dad, Malachi, I believe, and his siblings. He's the oldest. And then his younger brother is named after his dad. And then he has 2 twin brothers and a sister named Charlotte. And, so his dad's an alcoholic, and all of them are Irish. And his dad's an alcoholic and doesn't really work. And his mom is super hardworking, but she doesn't get any help from the dad to take care of the kids, so she's always tired. And so the kids are, never really taken care of, so Frank is often put in charge of his little siblings. Oh, and then the baby sister dies, so the mom is like, okay, we should go back to Ireland. And so they go back to Ireland, and they're even poorer there than they were in America. And in America, they were really poor. I'll get into it later, but yeah, they were really poor. Just want to say that. So they're even poorer in Ireland. They have to stay in their grandma's house for a little bit, but then they get their own place, and then one of the twins dies, and the twin is named Oliver. Oliver dies first. And then a couple months later, Eugene dies. So that was pretty upsetting, right? And so then the mom, Angela, is really depressed, obviously, and she doesn't want to stay in the same place anymore. So they go to a new house that is even worse, and the entire street shares one bathroom outside, and they dump all of they call them chamber pots. They just dump all of them in there, and so it smells really bad in their place. It's pretty awful. They live in really bad conditions. And the apartment floods every winter, so they have to live upstairs most of the time. So that's pretty bad. And then Angela has 2 more kids, Michael and Alfie. And then when Frank is 11, he gets typhoid fever, which was very dangerous, and so he goes into the hospital for a few months. And he's pretty much completely isolated there, and then he meets a friend named Patricia, and she they never actually see each other in person. She's just next to him, and she gives him a couple books and poems and stuff. And that's when Frank really starts to love literature. And so he gets out of the hospital, and he goes home, and he sees that his dad still doesn't have a job. But by this point, it's World War II, and he's seeing these other families on his street whose dads have gone to the war or gone to London to go get jobs, and they're sending money back to their families in the form of telegrams. And so there are all these new rich people in the street that they live on. So Frank asks his dad to go to war pretty much, and he's like, okay, I'll do it. And for like a couple weeks, they are getting money and things are looking a little bit better for them. But then, oh, also Frank gets this like weird thing when his eyes happen. He gets like an eye infection. But so his dad kind of abandons them after a little bit, and they don't have any money once again. And another thing that I forgot to mention was Frank believes in Catholic teachings, but he's so poor. And during that time, and I guess just in Ireland, the Catholic Church didn't really support poor people, or didn't like them, or didn't really want them around pretty much. And so he was always doing things to try to be a better person and have better morals and be accepted by the church. But the church was always just kind of I don't know, not accepting him. I don't really know how to say it, but his feelings were kind of getting hurt because they weren't showing him the kind of support that he needed. Okay, this is taking a really long time, and I'll try to speed it up. So pretty much, Frank's mom gets pneumonia, but she's okay. And then, what happens? What happens? Oh, so they're really poor, right? And they have to move in with their mom's cousin, and then he's really mean to them, and so Frank doesn't really like him in the first place, but then he learns that his mom is just kind of prostituting herself. I don't know if that's a verb, but she's just like having sex with him so that he will let them stay there. And so Frank gets really mad at her, and then he gets kicked out, and he also gets really mad at his mom's cousin. And so he gets kicked out, and then his brothers, well, he gets a job, and so he can provide for himself, and he moves into his own place, and then his brothers ask if they can move in with him, and then he gets like a girlfriend for a little bit, and he's kind of worried about like having premarital sex and what that'll mean with like getting into heaven and stuff. And she has tuberculosis, and then she dies, and he's like, oh, what if she goes to hell? And so then the book ends with Frank, who's about to leave for America, and he's like 16 or 17. Okay, Frank actually gives us a really vivid image of poverty, because he gives like specific examples instead of, you know, just saying like, we were poor, it was bad, you know. Like an example of this is, he talks about like every little step that it took to get like one little simple thing done. Like when I think Oliver was sick, they had to boil an onion in milk for some reason. Like apparently that was a cure for it, and to boil the milk they had to get coal, and they had to get the milk, and they had to get the onion, and they had to like walk for miles and miles, and it took so long for them to get the basic ingredients to do that, and the baby just ended up dying anyway. So I guess it's weird to say that I liked that, but I liked it because it really put things in perspective for me personally, because, you know, nowadays, and me not being a poor person, it's like I can't really imagine or think about what it would take to, you know, do those kinds of things, being him. So him like providing all of those things for me really like made me understand what it was like. And another example of that was the whole shoe thing. Like at Frank's school, there are a lot of kids that don't even have shoes, and so he's set him up in this book to make it seem like he's like the poorest person on the whole world. But then when you see that he has shoes and some other kids don't, then it also puts it in perspective, because it's like he's not even the worst case scenario, and he has like such a hard life. And it's so hard with his shoes because he can't afford new shoes, and it's like wintertime and he just has one pair of shoes. So his dad, it's my brother, his dad has to like take a tire off of a car or something, and then he has to like chop up the little bits of the tire and put them onto the boys' shoes, and it's like really humiliating for them at school because the kids who do have regular shoes are like making fun of them. And once again, it was just very helpful for me, and I probably for like a lot of other readers who don't really know what the extent of their poverty was, and to like see what it's like in Frank's everyday life really, I don't know, just made it more real for me. Another thing that I liked about this book, I liked a lot of things about it, okay, was that it's not just all bad things. Like, obviously a lot of people think that it's a sad story, but to me it was pretty uplifting because, A, Frank McCourt's sense of humor is like really nice. I don't know, he's funny, so that just made it more enjoyable for me. Like, it wasn't completely depressing. There were a lot of funny moments in the book, like when he throws up his first communion in his grandma's backyard, and then he has to go to confession and tell the priest, and then the priest is like, "Stop bothering me." I don't know. You can find it in the book, but that was funny. And then, so yeah, it's a funny book, and then also it doesn't just talk about the horrible things that happened to him. It was like it also included, the small joys, I guess, that Frank could find in his life, and that was just inspiring to me because in the book his life seems so depressing, and so the fact that even he can find happiness in life, that's just inspiring to me. And yeah, that actually made it into a much happier story because it shows how he could actually get out of that, and he made a life for himself, and he wasn't doomed to be just like his parents, he had a dream and then he accomplished it. So I liked that part of it. The only thing I disliked in this book was one scene in particular where one of the baby's noses is like really stuffed up, and then the dad comes up with really an idea to just put his mouth on the nose and just suck all the snot out into his mouth. I thought that was pretty disgusting, but other than that, it's a thumbs up from me. Guess who I recommend this book to? Everyone. Well, yeah, everyone. And also people who are not poor, people who did not grow up in the 20th century, because it tells you a lot about what life was like, those two things. And also anyone who doesn't really know about Ireland and the culture there, particularly in the town Limerick that Frank McCourt grew up in, because I didn't really know a lot about it, but then the book kind of definitely it's my brother again. So, what was he saying? Oh yeah, Frank really gives an insight into what the culture was like back then, and it also the book really helps you understand why the characters make these choices that they do because of the culture that they live in, and they may do some crazy things, but it's for a good reason. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that definitely relates to cultural perspectives and identity, I hope. Right? Okay.